Hey everyone, Ronald here. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the 5 different types of categories of interview styles that you could come across when you're on the job market. And you know what? Honestly, even if you're not on the job market, you should stick around and check this out because really we should always be prepared to interview even when we're not looking for work. That's how you stay sharp on the edge where you need to be. Put in a comment if you know what movie that line is from. Stick around and let's jump into it. All right, everyone. So like I mentioned, there are 5 different categories of interview styles that I've come across. If there's a particular style that you came across that I don't cover in this video, please mention that in the comments so we can all learn from our shared experiences. So the first is personality interviews. And that is exactly what it sounds like. You know, they might ask you what you do for fun, why you got this job or why you're trying to get this job, why you leave your old job. Questions just to kind of get a sense of who you are. Sometimes it's a little hard to be natural during an interview. And as silly as it sounds, it's something that you might want to just practice. What? Practice being natural? Yeah. Practice being yourself. Practice so that you don't get nervous, especially when it's a job that you do want. This is why I recommend, sometimes even if it's a job that you might not really want, just for the sake of practicing, it's good to interview. Interviewing is a skill in itself. So why wait to interview just for the ultimate jobs and then you're all like nervous and you really can't be natural, you can't be yourself. So the more you interview, the more natural you could be, the more you'll pass with flying colors the personality test. Unless you don't have a good personality, but that's something else you could try to work on. So that's the first type of interview style, all right? And usually the type of people that have those interviews are HR people. They're the ones that usually conduct them. Sometimes a team lead might ask a few personality-related questions, but usually it's HR people, the non-technical people, all right? And just because they're non-technical, don't underestimate the importance of that interview, okay? The second type of interview that you might experience is a general technical interview. And what I mean by that is asking technical questions, but that falls under two approaches. The first are like direct definition type of questions. For example, they might say, hey, what's polymorphism? Explain to me what object-oriented programming is. Questions like that. That's related to whatever you are interviewing for. If it's a React position, you're going to have a lot of direct React questions. If it's Java or C#, same thing. So I highly recommend going online, just searching interview questions for the particular type of job that you're looking for. Look at their requirements and then find interview questions based on those skill sets that they want you to have, and then just practice going through them with flashcards, okay? The second type of question you might get for general technical interviews are situational. So for example, what would you do if you come into work and you see that your code is working a lot slower than it was the day before and you haven't done anything? All right, so questions like that, just sit back and think realistically, what would you do? How would you troubleshoot it? They just want to see what are the steps that you take to troubleshoot problems. And for questions like that, also feel free to ask questions back. You could say, was there anyone that had access to our code that normally doesn't? Was there a power outage? Whatever, you know, you can go back and forth so that this way you can better position yourself to answer the question in a smart way. All right. Now, the third category is whiteboarding. Whiteboarding tends to be involved for interviewing with companies that are really technical in nature, like Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft. And when it comes to whiteboarding, there's two areas that you need to be aware of. Knowing how to whiteboard comfortably pseudocode, all right? So it doesn't have to be exact syntax, but general ideas of how to get your methods written down to get your point across your classes. Or maybe it might be class diagrams that you need to draw to get your thought process across. So that's something that you want to practice too. The next type of whiteboarding that you might end up doing is if you're drawing objects like databases and servers to explain whatever answer it is to a question that they've asked. So that's the third category, whiteboarding. The fourth is straight up coding, all right? And that breaks into three different forms. The first is pair programming. They might ask you to sit down with somebody and you guys do pair programming. There are some companies that have their teams working in pairs to do pair programming. So look up pair programming and understand how that works with drivers and navigators. And it's a little uncomfortable at first if you've never done it before, because programming is kind of a personal thing, and now all of a sudden you're asked to do it with somebody. But if you think that they might ask you to do that, then you should practice, okay? The second type of coding interview is just straight up live coding. So you can be on your computer and they ask you to write a particular program to accomplish something, and they're online just watching you, just like hovering over you, just staring, judging. Judge, judge, judge. I hate those types. Again, it's a personal thing, and here, someone's just like staring at you. But you got to get used to it. Sometimes that happens, okay? Especially when you're working, if the interview is remote and it's not in person, they're going to be watching just to see what your thought process is. If you're doing that, you might also want to talk through what you're thinking as you're coding. So this way it's not an uncomfortable silence, and they can grow an appreciation to how you're thinking as you're writing your code, okay? If they actually really want you to do well, sometimes if you get stuck, they might give you like a little hint here and there, but don't count on that. The third type of coding interview would be an isolated take-home coding exam. So they're asking you once again to code something, but this time they leave you alone, and they ask you to do it at home and then submit it to them. Or you go into their office and they give you an hour or two, you code, and then you come back, say, I'm done, and then they're like, hey, thank you, thanks for coming. And then after you leave, then they review your code and then get back to you with their verdict. If you get the chance to take something home to code, make sure it's absolutely perfect. They might say, hey, we don't need you to spend 10 hours on it or whatever, just get it working and that's it. No, make sure it's perfect. Make sure that you're using good conventions. Make sure that your code is as efficient as possible, if much shorter than it needs to be in order to get work done. Make sure that there's no typos in your comments. Yeah, that sounds kind of silly, but no, don't, because they might tell you it doesn't need to be perfect, but the next candidate turns in something perfect and then they end up getting the gig. Okay. Now, the fifth type of interview, which is not really too common nowadays, but still could pop up once in a while, it's a third-party assessment. So they might have you sit in front of a computer or send you a link to some website where that website is going to ask you these coding questions. Most of the times they're multiple choice and they're timed. So it's kind of like taking the SATs all over again. Yay! Or it might include some programming. Sometimes they just have like maybe multiple choice clips of code and you need to choose from that. But those are third-party assessments. It's not too common nowadays, but it still happens. So that's it. All right. Just to recap, you have personality interviews, general technical interviews, you have whiteboarding interviews, coding interviews, and then third-party assessment interviews. And realistically, it's never just one of these. As you probably already figured out, it's usually a mixture. So what I would highly recommend is whenever you're about to interview or you're talking with a recruiter, just ask them, hey, I just wanted to know, just so I could best prepare for the interview, what types of questions are they going to ask? Are they going to ask me to do some whiteboarding? Will they be having me do an assessment on some website? Is it more of a take-home exam that I need to do? Ask the recruiter. There's nothing wrong with that. Ask the HR person if you're not working with a recruiter, okay? Don't hesitate to get as much information to prepare. And obviously, make sure that you phrase the question so that they don't think that you're asking for the questions. Like, what are they gonna ask me? Or what questions are they gonna ask me? Don't phrase it like that. Make sure you ask what types of questions, and then give an example. Will it be focused on databases? Will it be more focused on front end? All right. And then this way you could at least prepare. All right. So that's all I wanted to say for now. Let me know if I covered all the different types of interviews that you personally experienced, if you have. And if not, like I mentioned earlier, please mention it in the comments. And this way we could all be aware of it, okay? So if you like that video, hit that like button. You know that definitely helps me out with the algorithm. And also to check out more videos in the future, go ahead and subscribe, hitting that notification bell too. And to my left here, you can see a couple more videos that you could check out. So until then, I will see you guys in the next video.